And greetings, all you lovely people out there, especially greetings to my Christian brethren, brothers and sisters in Christ. And maybe I might not be the nicest guy today, but I'm just gloating for payback. A little bit of the backstory for this video is Matt Dillahunty was in a debate where he was buried. And that debate is going to be a model that's going to haunt him because other people are going to kind of utilize. I expect that Dillahunty will be under threat of people just pulling stunts like that again. Now, a little bit of the backstory. It was provident that it was Andrew Wilson that ended up debating Dillahunty. Guess who was going to be flown out to Dallas? The plan was Salvador Cordova was possibly going to debate Dillahunty again. I had debated Dillahunty sometime in January 2021. He was a total jerk. He was rude. He was bullying, shouting at me, losing his temper. And it's just nice. I mean, just a lot of unwholesome, dishonest, despicable debate tactics. I mean, I was very naive that this would be a scholarly debate about substance when I debated him, and the debate was 4 hours long. It was on Pascal's wager. And it took me a while, unfortunately, to figure out that this was not about truth. It was about trying to disrupt and be as rude as possible without being terribly obvious about it. You know, I'd be in the middle of a sentence trying to prove a point and he'd interrupt. Did that several times when I'd be refuting, and then he'd tell me to shut up. He told me to shut up in the debate. The moderator, James, let that go. And this whole free discussion format is, can be abused by people like Dillahunty. Dillahunty got his comeuppance, though. Praise God that it wasn't me that was there. It was Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson, and the link is in the video description, buried Dillahunty, gave him a taste of his own medicine. Now, people will complain that, that was dirty, that was kind of nasty, it was, may not have been on topic. Well, whatever the rules of the debate were, Dillahunty's reputation is going to be trashed. So let's say the rules let's say for the sake of argument, the rules of the debate were totally disregarded. The point is that Dillahunty was humiliated for his viewpoints, kind of in a very painful way, in a personal way. And people said that's a hit below the belt, and like, oh yeah, I'll even grant that. It still hurts. I mean, I did not know this until I started reading the comment section. And given Dillahunty's reaction, some of the atheists have been saying he's dating a trans individual. I don't know. It's not clear whether it's some guy saying he's a girl when he's actually male, or some female saying she's a guy when she's actually a female. I don't know. I don't care. But even the atheists seem to be saying that that's the case. And what ended up happening is Dillahunty puts on the table in his opening statement something about LGBTQ. I did not watch Dillahunty's opening. I just watched the kind of the part just before he walked off stage. And Wilson was actually making kind of a vulgar but actually very accurate intellectual assailing of atheism. Now the topic was secularism, but again, this was just whatever the topic was. This was a tremendous attack on Dillahunty's person, and it was kind of fun to watch. And everything that Dillahunty, whom I call DillaWimpy, represents. And at the end of as Dillahunty is walking off stage, he says to Andrew, "You're a jackass." And Andrew, man, he has a quick wit. He said, "Well, Matt, you and your husband have a good day, okay?" I mean, just so you and your husband have a good day. So whether I don't know what Matt was, that was a low blow, but it was still really funny. But it actually has some significance to Matt's intellectual arguments. Now, if you saw the thumbnail, you may be wondering what the thumbnail is all about. There is, YouTube is sometimes very good at detecting what I'm interested in. It figures out what ads. I get a lot of ads for Thermo Fisher, by the way. Thermo Fisher is a chemical company. And I get a lot of YouTube presenting, oh, hey, you want to study stuff about the Ukraine war, military science, history, psychology, that sort of stuff. So let me show this. There is if you will indulge me. There is this, there was a big to do because Megyn Kelly, she's the famous Megyn Kelly, see if I have it. That's Megyn Kelly there on the right. And Megyn Kelly was a Fox News host. She has her own show. And this went viral. She was wearing a hat that said, "Make women female again. Make women female again." And she was saying that she's gotten fed up with these poor real teenage girls, like on a swim team, and some guy barges into their locker room and starts, doing something really inappropriate that should be a criminal offense. But then he claims that he's a girl and then he gets away with it. And she's pointing out she's very fed up with that, fed up with the schools, a lot of schools promoting it, tolerating it, promoting it, and allowing it. And that she was surprised when she had this hat that said, "Make women female again." She was astonished that a lot of people who would normally be of liberal and left, on the left side of the political spectrum persuasion, were very sympathetic. It is because they are very upset that their daughters are being assaulted and subject to inappropriate behavior by guys. It's that simple. And Megyn was, careful to acknowledge. He said, look, there are people that have genuine dysphorias. But there has to be a line drawn. Okay, so so Andrew was keen to say, he made some really good arguments. It's like you're assuming truth in things that you just assume you can't actually formally prove. But it makes a lot of sense to assume that it is true because it works so well. So like the concept of math and logic, these are primitives that you just assume because it makes more sense of the world. Those are very good arguments. But then he goes on and he said secularism allows all of this stuff with transgenderism. Whether it does or doesn't, certainly there's a body of atheists that follow that. And that really was a subtle jab at Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty took it really personal. He said, this argument was about secularism, not what I believe or whatever. And Andrew was keen to say, hey, look, I don't care. He basically said, well, that's still kind of secular. And it didn't matter, really. He was going right after Dillahunty and saying, so you think then that just because a dude says that he's a, a woman that he is. And Andrew was saying, look, that violates science. I mean, okay, so if I were Andrew, my nerd side would say this. Let me see if I could find this. This is really good. There is this 55-year-old dude. He was 46 at the time. Let me show it to you. He was 46 years old at the time, father of like 8 kids. And he says now that he's a 6-year-old girl. So, I mean, what do his children think about this? I mean, is he a 6-year-old girl just because he says so? And this guy is kind of homeless, and people have just kind of adopted him, saying, well, you know, we're going to adopt a 6-year-old girl. I don't know how that works out. This is okay. So Andrew is just really harping on that and saying, look, this is not scientific. You secularists are claiming to be about science, and then when it comes, to something like this, you abandon it on your whims, because, like, for example, in the case of this guy, whatever his real name was, one, there's no way he's a 6-year-old girl. It doesn't make it so just because you say so. And so what Andrew was saying is, that's the irony, is you're making people, you're saying that Christians, you're insinuating Christians are lunatics or whatever for pursuing something imaginary. And I actually don't know if Andrew's a Christian, but he was pointing out, I mean, look, Matt, you talk about pursuing what's imaginary, something that is demonstrably false on any empirical level. You're going to say that that's, someone who's a dad who actually proved that he's male. You're going to say that just because he says he's a woman, he's a woman. How and he was pointing out, this is absurd. You've abandoned rationality. You've abandoned logic. Because by your own logic, then you ought to be tolerating Christians if they want to believe something just because they want to. Now, that's not the argument for Christianity, but he's pointing out the absurdity of their own practices. And that was getting very personal. Now, I'm going to interject something here. For the Christian who may have experienced miracles and answered prayer, who studied science and concluded that life is a miracle, and concluded the universe is finely tuned, that there's an archaeological record, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, wow. Thank you for pointing this out. Then I stand corrected. That ought to count for more evidence than just I would say that holds more credibility as a valid argument, an argument in favor of the existence of God, than taking Stephanie's word that he's a 6-year-old girl. All right. And there seems to be a segment of the atheist community that is totally cool with that. And just basically calling out Dillahunty for his views about transgenderism, and then also taking a real jab at him personally, because this is really pushing his buttons. And an atheist, it was really fun because the comment section, okay, so I linked to the video below. The comment section had a lot of atheists saying they're really upset with Dillahunty. He wimped out. He was a coward. People had taken time off work, possibly, had paid money to travel, taken their time to go there, and he gets up and walks away from the debate. It's at least, look, dude, you may be misrepresented, you may be lied to. That's no basis for you walking out. What you do is you try to stand up to it, you try to call it out, and set the record straight. just because someone's using dishonest debate tactics, I'm not saying that Andrew is, but let's say hypothetically he was. That's no excuse to do that. Yeah, that is so disrespectful of the people who came to see you. You know, it's like you pay money to see a sporting event and then one team just, you know, defaults and walks off. Someone had rightly pointed out there's a chance that Dillahunty knew he was going to be humiliated because there was not, you know, he probably perceived there was just going to be an unending bunch of subtle ad hominems, you know, as Andrew probably would be hammering on the transgender issue and basically indirectly taking stabs at Dillahunty's dating life, whatever Dillahunty's doing with that. You know, basically Dillahunty would be the butt of a lot of jokes thereafter, and made fun of. And so Dillahunty gets up and just says, you know, this is beneath me, I'm going. And he walks off stage. 45 minutes is left then, and Andrew just basically takes questions from the audience with the remaining 45 minutes that were scheduled. And I just got to say that felt like divine justice for the way Dillahunty has treated people and abused them, and even abused me. When I debated him, he was screaming at me, interrupting me. You know, he was everything he accused Andrew of doing. He was a reflection of the way he treated others. And I knew I was on the receiving end of that, and I took it. You know, I didn't walk off stage. I really didn't raise my voice at him. I was probably, you know, people were disappointed because I was such a nice guy. You know, I was just very scholarly. I just tried to stick to my points and my arguments. And Dillahunty was just screaming and saying, you know, all sorts of things, accusing me falsely of stuff I didn't say. For example, I asked him specifically if Jesus healed you like the blind man, the account of the blind man in chapter, you know, in that. Oh, thank you for the kind words, everyone. If I forget someone, apologies. Let me try to get my, yeah. I mean, it just seemed like I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to be a nice guy. It's just kind of in my nature, you know, kind of the gentle. I was raised as a gentleman, and I try to maintain that. And I was coached them to debate. It's like, Sal, keep your cool, and if you get Dillahunty mad, keep him mad. And I kept him mad that whole debate, but I still didn't like it. I do like streaming, and unfortunately, I'm very busy. Just a brief update, just along those lines. I am possibly entering a PhD program in engineering, and it'll be at engineering and biology PhD if I get what I'm hoping to get. This came out of the blue. Faculty member, emeritus faculty member from Leeds University in the UK, called me and said, Sal, there's a certain dean in an American school. Call him right now. Here's his phone number. He's expecting to hear from you. And I got offered a PhD program, fully paid, if I do a track in fluid dynamics. If I self-fund, I could do anything I want. So there are a number of people, a lot of discussions that have to be made. I also have to figure out if I self-fund, you know, I'm going to work that in with everything else. And it's just crazy. People also know that I'm in a legal dispute, and I need to get the clear from the attorneys before I speak in specifics. So that's there. I'm trying to renovate the house. If you noticed, I don't have my basement background because now it's getting cold. I moved to my command center up here. As I renovate parts of the house, you might see me stream from those locations. I have several papers that I'm working on. I have to kind of spool up on some math before I go back to grad school. And Thank you to all that have watched my appearance on Denver KLTT radio. And I'm really glad I wasn't the one that debated Dillahunty this time around in Dallas. I was invited. I actually accepted, and then James called me and said, well, it's off. We couldn't work out the details with Dillahunty. It was going to be kind of a 2-against-2 debate, and that didn't work out. It wasn't because Dillahunty specifically rejected me. It involved other parties than myself. But it worked out because he ended up with Andrew Wilson. So, Dillahunty was kind of crushed. But I was going to go back to the example. I asked Dillahunty, I said, if you were healed, if you were that blind man in John chapter 9, and someone came and healed you, and it was Jesus, and Jesus tells you he's the Messiah, would you follow him? And Dillahunty said, no. And I said, then nothing's going to persuade you. Dillahunty went ballistic when I said that. He said, that's an attack on my character. And of course, being the nice guy, I didn't really say anything. I should have said, no, it's not an attack on your character. It's an attack on your stupidity and your lack of insight. I didn't say that. It turned out that was just, Dillahunty, he had no justification to say that, because if you go to some of his videos, he said, well, if I saw a miracle, how do I know that it's God and not some alien? All right. But I want to point out there's a problem because of Dillahunty's advocacy of transgenderism. Yes. I'm sure I've seen some of you guys, man. I'm so sorry it's been so long. Got a lot going on in my life. I'm working on books. Oh my goodness, I'm also working on books and scientific papers. I got published in peer reviewed. I'm kind of being quiet about it. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. I got to speak to faculty members. I got invited with John Sanford about a week and a half ago to address 40 faculty members of Christian schools. These are science faculty and deans of biology, biochemistry, engineering, plus researchers in industry. I was also invited to another conference over the summer. There are like 70 people there. I got to present, and there were some really top caliber scientists there. So a lot's going on. That's why you haven't seen me. So anyway, where was I? I was talking about, okay, so you contrast Dillahunty saying, I don't know that it's God. But yet he'll clearly believe some dude or whatever it is that he's dating, just because that person says they're one, they're either male or female. They're either a woman or a man. I get confused. And you'll just take their word for it, even though upon closer inspection, you could actually see they're not what they say they are. Okay, so it's like, so this is telling me, Dillahunty, you'll persuade. You're quite. It's very easy for you to persuade yourself with something you want to believe. It's not. This was never about objective facts. That's the thing. For you, it wasn't objective facts. I just asked a simple hypothetical. When you're given all this evidence, it's like, well, you'll just decide you don't find it believable. So if you have a dude and you want to believe it's a girl, you'll just believe that because you don't find it believable that that he's a she or she's a he or whatever. And that's the rich irony of it. He's just kind of debased himself. And he's not practicing any logic, and this is coming to haunt him. Now, would I be that mean? No. But God sent Andrew Wilson. Andrew punished him for it. Absolutely annihilated him. And so what if, I mean, from my viewpoint, it's like, okay, Matt, uh, you have this habit of hanging up on people. You can bully them on your radio show and whatever, and people are cheering. It doesn't feel so good for Matt when you're on the receiving end of, you know, he's getting a taste of his own medicine. But the other thing is, this time it really, this actually has a lot of logic and empiricism to back it up. So, now he's the object. He's going to be the persistent object of ridicule. And because the secular community has seemed to come behind this transgender issue, and people, in the secular community's caving for it, you have a lot also in the secular community that are uncomfortable with it for the reasons I pointed out. Megyn Kelly was saying a lot of her liberal friends that have, daughters that are teenagers, they're being, there are certain guys that are abusing and claiming to be girls, going into the women's locker room and, doing things that are inappropriate. And finally, people are drawing the line. And so now there's this, it's represented by, this picture of Megyn Kelly, and she's wearing that hat saying, make women female again. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I mean, I'm just gloating that Matt Dillahunty got his comeuppance, and it was delivered in a pretty rude way, but hey, I'm cool with that. He had it coming to him, but it really points out his hypocrisy, his lack of logic. He talks about rationality and he doesn't practice it in his own life, just full of contradictions. And now he's going to be a laughing stock. He had a chance to have a serious intellectual scholarly discussion with me. He totally ignored any point I made that was, in terms of scientific physical evidence, what scientists have had to say, because Pascal's wager dealt with probability theory. I started to put it out. He screamed out, he said, "You're not going to lecture me about math." I was just like, dude, you got a high school degree. I have a math degree. I have an engineering degree. I have a computer science degree. I have a physics degree. You might, if you're really curious to learn some of this. And by the way, he said something stupid. He said he makes a living playing craps. And I laughed at him. He corrected himself quickly, but I think he resented the fact that I laughed at him. And he tried to cover up and start screaming some more and saying, you're, insinuating I don't know what I'm talking about, blah, blah, blah. And I just let him go. He had the chance, to really engage in argument, and he dodged, and he did dishonest debate tactics. And his fan club thought, oh, he demolished Sal. I'm like, no, he avoided engaging the arguments. And so he had his chance to actually think and consider and evaluate. But I realized, oh, this isn't about truth for him. This is about just follow your whims, and this is about Matt Dillahunty just promoting himself. And the fact that now he's dating a trans, supposedly, this is what even some of the atheists are saying. It's calling him out on his logical abilities. It's calling him out on his logic, because there is such, there is such a push for this, and it defies science. I mean, okay, look, if you were debating me on, this issue, I'm just going to show him this and say, okay, this guy says he's a 6-year-old girl. You're going to insist that he's a 6-year-old girl just because he says so. All right. And people can get bullied by their social circles and all, and he has a chance to stand up and show some spine, and he's not doing it. He's caving in for whatever reason, either personally or whatever. He's caving either into his own whims or the whims of his peers or whatever. Science doesn't care. Objective facts don't care about your feelings. I mean, that axiom cuts both ways for Christians and also atheists, and also for people advocating this transgenderism. Um, so it's just kind of delicious to see him get punished like this. And he's acting so smug. It's like this, he walked off stage, he rage quit. It's like, this is beneath me. And, I'm really glad I didn't go to Dallas, because as I saw Matt behave, I said, look, dude, I think you're beneath me, Matt. I know that's a really arrogant thing for me to say, but I was like, I don't need to deal with this high schooler that says he makes a living playing craps. And I called him out on it. He was embarrassed a little bit. I don't need to deal with you, dude. But I didn't rage quit and walk off stage when he misbehaved. But I will say this, he may not ever deal with Andrew again. I can understand why. But, I could play the same game and say, dude, you're way beneath me. And I think that's how I feel at this point. After seeing how he was just so petulant and petty and just cowardly, and then his arguments suck, why should I mess with him? I get to speak to an audience of 70 university professors who are scientists. I don't need someone of that low of an intellect, honestly. But I like to engage the argument. I really do. I like to engage the argument, meaning I will have a discussion about these topics, probably not in a formal debate format, because of the problem with Brandolini's law, and that's a whole nother topic. Brandolini's law means that it takes like 40 times more effort to refute a falsehood than it actually does to state it. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in evolutionary theory. There's a lot of that in atheist arguments that are very shallow. And if someone wants to engage it at a really detailed level, it's not a debate format. It's kind of a very careful discussion, often through text and pondering and thought. Before I close, I'll say one of the most interesting arguments I ever got in favor of God's existence was from psychologist Dr. Orion Taraban. Orion Taraban. And he said, well, how can you prove that you exist, you as a self? And it was a very compelling argument. He said, this is kind of the same thing with God. And you could extend that to the problem, the issue of logic and math. It's like, well, you might not be able to prove that these things are true experimentally. You can't prove math is true experimentally. It's kind of hard to get into why you can't prove it experimentally. They're axioms of mathematics. Axioms are things that are accepted, that are generally believed to be unprovable, and you don't even try. You just kind of accept it because it seems to make sense. It seems to have consistency with the way we describe the world. And Orion Taraban said, okay, look, you can't prove consciousness exists. You can't prove yourself exists. That there is such a thing as self. And there has been a movement in some circles to say the self doesn't exist, but it makes more sense. Conceptually, he was saying, even if you're an atheist or agnostic, I want you to think about what is the most coherent way to conceptualize things. He said that also is a good argument for God. It seems to make sense of reality. And that's, despite all the problems we have. So, that's a more substantive debate. And Matt Dillahunty is not about that. And man, that was just one of the best. I commented on that video over there at Modern Day Debate. This is the best debate ever. And I was getting a lot of likes for that. So guys, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I don't know when I'll be back on this channel, but it was just good to gloat a little bit over DillaWimpy's demise and seeing him just kind of beaten so bad he had to walk off stage. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Anyway, guys, thank you, you beautiful people. I am honored to have you spend time with me, that you'd hear me rant like this. It's a delight to do this. I will be doing kind of more structured shows, hopefully, and I'm trying to get my studio back up and running. But thank you so much for your time, and take care, and God richly bless you.